crucifixion, that Pontius Pilate was in Israel at Caesarea Maritima. And so, you know, the fact of the matter is, brothers and sisters, I don't need an archaeological dig to believe the Bible is true. But it makes me jump for joy whenever those things come about that the world scoffs at. And the more they dig, the more they discover that the Bible is indeed, the veracity of the Scriptures is unquestionable. It is absolutely so.
Right.
This is the seating for the Hippodrome, where they had the gladiator fights and all sorts of debauchery. More of the Hippodrome. Okay. This is an aqueduct. There is no natural source of water in all of Caesarea Philippi. This city, at the time of Christ, 100,000 occupants. 100,000 people lived here. Can you imagine living in a city, the Mediterranean is not potable water. Can you imagine living in a city where you've got 100,000 people and no way to get them water? This aqueduct brought water from the springs of Mount Hermon. Now, this section of it is utterly intact. Right over here, not too far out of the realm of the picture, it just drops off and it stops, and the rest of it is no longer. Further up, there's remnants. But this aqueduct, the water flowed in troughs up along here and into the city down here. If you could see beyond this aqueduct, there is a man-made port that King Herod had built. This would have occurred before Christ, just a couple of years. And brothers and sisters, Billy and several others in here that have dealt with construction would find this very interesting. I found it fascinating. This port was built using hydraulic concrete, which means that it hardens underwater. The thought to me that 2,000 years ago they knew how to make concrete is astounding. Much less hydraulic concrete. This is a very bad picture. It's taken out of the window of a moving bus at 70 miles an hour. But this one, most of them are fairly good, but this one is not. You see this up here? This is a hillside village. In Israel, one thing you never see, if I'm driving from my house to Statesboro and I go down Highway 80 to get to Statesboro, I will pass farm after farm after farm, and each farm will have a house. You do not see that in Israel. The houses are all clustered together. Why would that be? For safety. And you leave your house and you go tend your farm. Now, if you're a farmer with sheep, you've got somebody tending those sheep 24 hours a day. But yet and still, there is no house in the midst of those flocks. They live under the stars. That reminds you of anything? You might could even see that between here and Statesboro. Except you can tell it's a little hilly. This is an excellent example of how lush and green the hill country of the region of Galilee and the Mediterranean is. It's all like this in that area, unless there's buildings there or agricultural pursuits. The Carmelite order. This is it is owned by the, of course, Catholic Church. This is on the site where Elijah had the showdown with the prophets of Baal.
Oh, yeah.
How many prophets of Baal were there? Oh, thank you, Brother Durwood. Bless you.
70?
450.
450.
450 prophets of Baal, and basically Elijah. He was pretty well alone. And King Ahab and Jezebel, and of course it had not rained for the space of what? 3 years?
3 years, yes. 3 years.
Elijah challenges Ahab and his priests to Baal, and he has them to set the sacrifice there and to pray and call down on Baal to consume the sacrifice, and the 450 priests in different rank and file, they pray so hard and nothing, of course, happens. And they even go to the point of cutting themselves.
Wake him up, he's asleep.
Wake him up. Elijah kind of picks on him. He makes fun of him. Maybe he's hard of hearing. Maybe he's sleeping. Well, then Elijah, whenever it's his turn to show forth the glory of the Lord, Elijah tells him, okay, dig a trench around the sacrifice and bring barrels and barrels of water and fill up the trench and drench the sacrifice. I want it to be absolutely beyond your doubt at all that this is of the Lord. And of course, God sent fire from heaven and consumed the sacrifice. This is where the site where that happened. Brothers and sisters, to visit these sites in Israel is to visit a Catholic church. That's basically what you're doing. A Catholic church, or a Greek Orthodox church, or a Russian Orthodox church. Of all the sites in Israel that are significant to the life, death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, there is only one that is owned by Baptists. With the exception of the one or two that I've talked to about lately, Billy. Can you take a guess what that site would be? The Baptist owned. The Garden Tomb. We actually, not we in the respect of primitive Baptists, but it is a Protestant owned and controlled site in Israel. This is Brother Craig DeLoach preaching under the vines at the top of Mount Carmel. Okay. Somebody want to tell me what that is?
A shoehorn.
It's a locust bean. A locust pod. The beans, well, let me back up. And I did just the opposite of what I needed to do. When the scriptures say that, now, it is never once said of Elijah in the Old Testament that he ate locusts. Not one time. You won't find that passage in the scripture. It is, however, said of who?
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, who is supposed to be the New Testament equivalent of
Elijah.
They dressed similarly, and many people assume that because they dressed similarly, they must have eaten similarly. Well, and that may very well be, but regardless of that, we do know that at least John the Baptist is said to have eaten locust and wild honey. Now, it is an interesting possibility that whenever the scriptures say that he lived, his fare was locust and wild honey, it is an interesting possibility that this is what they're talking about as far as the locust, not a grasshopper.
Explain that. I remember that being
What you call that, a locust bean?
I don't know.
Something about, it was something he said, was something. I remember him explaining that, something about equivalent of chocolate
Let
liquor.
me tell you. Well, I'll come back. I'm sorry. What, Miss Debbie?
What you call that, a locust bean?
Okay. This itself is the pod.
Okay.
Right here's a bean, right here's a bean, and right here's a bean.
Okay.
I actually ate this thing.
That was a New York strip. You thought it was a bean.
Our tour guide told us that it tasted like black licorice, which I don't like. But I wanted to see for myself if it's edible, if it's stomach, if I could stomach it.
Right.
Let me tell you something. It tastes like chocolate, like black licorice, whatever that taste is. And it settles on the stomach well. It was not at all hard to chew up. And I can well see, and this thing is full of nutrients. And I can well see that being a possibility for the diet of John the Baptist and perhaps even Elijah.
Well, are there locust trees?
Yes, this tree right here,
Grows wild.
that pod came off of it. As a matter of fact, I picked that pod up right here where that pointer is, right there.
Pod picker.
This is our tour guide. His name is Waleed. Waleed is one of the smartest men in many ways. Now, he's got some kind of whacked out ideas about some things in the scripture. But let me back up. However, that being said, I take nothing away from him. He can quote the Bible backwards and forwards. He knows by memory the book of Psalms, all of the book of Psalms. And in all the 12 days that we were there, not one time did one of the preachers ask him a question he couldn't take the scriptures and answer. Not one time that I recall. Now, isn't that beautiful? That is overlooking the Jezreel Valley. And brothers and sisters, this is as green and fertile as it gets. This is at the top of Mount Carmel, and it is without a doubt one of the most breathtaking views I have ever in my life experienced. Another view of the Jezreel Valley. Is it at all like what you imagine? It was not at all what I imagined either. And again, these pictures do not do it justice. This is part of the garden area at the top of Mount Carmel. And as I've told you, to visit Israel is to visit churches. This is the monastery, one of them on Mount Carmel. This is our first noonday meal. The food in Israel is the most beautifully displayed. These colors are as vivid in person as they are in this picture. That's not a mishap with the coloring in the camera. Everything that you eat is absolutely vivid in color, and when you get it on your plate, it makes such a beautiful display. These are sugar beets. I'm not real sure what that is there. Canaan's head's in the way. That's all right. That's okay, son. This is zucchini. This is peppers. I remember that. And there's over here a big bowl of hummus and so forth and so on. But it was the most appetizing food I've ever seen, in presentation particularly. All over the countryside of Israel, whenever you come in